Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany, who's apparently very deep diving into his cell phone right now, is our very special guest today, Thursday, April 10th, 2025. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live, presented by Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin. AFP Wisconsin works to reignite the American dream and break down government barriers that hold us back from our full potential. Visit AFPWisconsin.com to learn more and join AFP to fight for more freedom for all Wisconsinites. With that, we welcome Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative who joins us on the second Thursday each month, Congressman Tom Tiffany. Tom, good morning.
Good morning. Is it warming up back in the homeland? Because I'm going to be back in about 24 hours.
It is. It's a little rainy today, which is good. If we get rain either at night or in the week, that's fine. But according to our official weather forecast person, Dirk Miller, who does our forecast for our Positive Tuesday shows, apparently it's supposed to be like in the 60s Saturday and sunny and gorgeous.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. So you're coming back when?
I'll hurry back.
Hurry.
Actually, so I don't normally do this, but I'm going to fly into Madison tonight. If everything goes well here, we have votes coming up in about a half hour. And if we get those done, then be flying into Madison. We're doing a judiciary hearing. I sit on the Judiciary Committee. And the chair of the subcommittee on intellectual property is Representative Fitzgerald from Wisconsin, from down in southeastern Wisconsin. Well, he's having a roundtable tomorrow at the UW in regards to what was referred to as NIL, N-I-L, name, image, likeness.
Oh, I'm familiar with it.
The whole thing that's going on in regards to the NCAA and stuff like that. It's a really interesting issue. But we're going to do a roundtable. That athletic director at UW-Madison is going to be there. We're going to have that tomorrow morning. I'm really anxious to join in on that because it is a big issue with the NCAA at this point, and just amateur athletics and the impact it'll have on Olympics and just various stuff like that. It's a very fascinating issue.
It really is. But what are you discussing? I mean, I thought this was a done deal a couple of 3 years ago. Is it now being looked at as not doing it, or what?
So there's been some court cases that have defined some of the parameters. Basically, some people would call it the Wild West at this point. Some people would say it's free markets. Hey, if a young person has these talents, shouldn't they be compensated for them? And we're looking at, okay, the courts have ruled on this, but is there a place for legislation that could be helpful in kind of setting some boundaries in regards to the issue, especially like the transfer portal, things like that? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And so we're just getting up to, at least for me, I'm just getting up to speed on it. And we're going to see if there's action that we can take legislatively here in Congress.
I can't wait to find out how that goes. So next month, I'll make sure we talk about that next month. But we have a whole bunch to get to, including something just happened yesterday. You sent out, your office sent out a press release. Our headline was Rep. Tom Tiffany's Wolf Delisting Bill Clears House Natural Resources Committee. I mean, you've been coming on the show for years. I feel like we talk about this all the time, and I feel like every time it comes up, I always say the same thing. Wasn't that already taken care of a while ago? And then your answer is always like, nope, not yet. So for people who didn't see that, what is that about?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is we've had this back and forth where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, both in the Obama administration as well as the Trump administration, said that the wolf should be delisted. It should be delisted from the Endangered Species Act. It has recovered. And then you'll get a judge, oftentimes from one of the coasts, East Coast or West Coast. They step in and say, we don't think it's recovered, so we're going to put it back on the endangered species list. And so you've had this volleying going back and forth for years now. And what we would like to do is pass legislation, just like or very similar to what Montana and Idaho have, that would delist the wolf statutorily, return management to the states. There will continue to be management. It'll just be done by the states rather than the federal government. And it would preclude judicial review. So in other words, it would no longer be in the hands of judges. it would just simply be in the hands of the wildlife managers in the states. By the
Yeah.
way, Montana and Idaho got that almost 15 years ago, and they very successfully have managed their wolf population.
By the way, good morning, Carol. Good morning, Mike Schaefer, our very good friend, Spring CEO Mike Schaefer, and Nathaniel Melton says this is big. Thank you, Mr. Tiffany. So this is past the. How far has this gotten in the past? Like what in the past? Because this has come up before. There's been things that are introduced. Is this the farthest it's ever gone?
Legislatively,
Yeah.
yes. Last session, we passed it out of the House and it died in the Senate.
Okay.
I think we're going to be able to get, though we have a very narrow margin, I think we're going to be able to pass it through the House once again this session and then get it to the Senate. And of course, the Senate has a different makeup, different leadership. We're really hopeful that the Senate will take it up and get it passed this time and get it to the president's desk. This is probably the best chance we've had. Now, I do not sit here and say, hey, we're going to have success here. It's going to get passed, all the rest, and get signed by the president. I would not predict that. It's got a ways to go here, but it is the best opportunity that we've had.
So far, is this a partisan? Is this basically a Republican or a partisan line vote? I mean, it's Republicans will, Democrats won't. Is that one, or are there kind of both sides?
Unfortunately, it has become a partisan issue. Now, we had, I think, 4 Democrats vote for it in the House
Hey.
last session. I'm hopeful that will happen once again. We had a couple of Republicans that voted against it, including Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz voted against it. I was so surprised at that, but nonetheless, so we had a couple of Republicans vote against it last time, and a few Democrats vote for it. We're hoping to get more people this time, and we'll really start working it now. And I'm hoping we can get it to a vote here before the end of May.
Whatever happened to Matt Gaetz?
Isn't he with like OAN?
I don't know. I just now realized that.
One of the conservative networks. Yeah. He's working with one of the conservative networks. In fact, I was interviewed. I should know because I interviewed with him last week. But I'm not sure. I think it's OAN, but I'm not sure. It's one of the networks, conservative networks, that he's interviewing people. He's a very good interviewer.
How was you had a SAVE Act not long ago. Where's that in the process?
SAVE Act, that was authored by my colleague Chip Roy from Texas. We expect to get a vote on that today. Shortly after I get done with the show, we're going to go to the floor and vote on some stuff, including the SAVE Act, which requires states to have to check for citizenship verification when people register to vote. So when you register to vote, you got to prove that you're a citizen of the United States in order to vote. It also requires the states to clean up their voter rolls. We've seen a number of states, and including some conservative states like Tennessee and Ohio, but Arizona. There's been a bunch of states that when they've checked their voter rolls, they've had a lot of non-citizens, in the thousands in some cases, that are on their voter rolls. And so this would also, besides showing proof of citizenship when you register to vote, it would require the states to clean up their rolls.
When I Googled legislative stuff, like 10 minutes before the show, kind of Googled legislation that has been passed this week. I have a question about one because I don't know what it means. No rogue rulings. What is that?
Yeah, that came out of the Judiciary Committee and Representative Issa from California. So you've been hearing about the judges that have been putting in these nationwide injunctions, right?
Yep.
To stop the president from being able to deport, the Venezuelan gang members. That's the most famous one, and but also other rulings like that. So what this bill does, and it's kind of our first attempt to tell the judiciary, you got to stay in your lane here, and because you're starting to infringe on the executive branch with these rulings. So, for example, Judge Boasberg, when he did the ruling that said you got to turn that plane around and return these bad guys to the United States, I mean, he was doing that in defiance of the Alien Enemies Act that was put in place in 1798, which allows the president unfettered authority to protect the homeland. That was reinforced in 1948 by a federal Supreme Court ruling saying this is non-justiciable, meaning that the judiciary does not review this because it's the executive branch's responsibility to protect the homeland. And so, yet this judge stepped in and he said, "I'm going to stop you from being able to do this." Now he got smacked down by the Supreme Court this week, but we've seen dozens of these rulings from
Oh,
these district court judges. So what the No Road Rulings Act does is it says a ruling by a district court judge only applies specifically to that case. You don't get to do a nationwide injunction with it.
I, that seems logical. But what does the other
It
side say? I don't mean other side like Democrats. Who's ever on the other side of this? I'm assuming
yeah,
Democrats, but regardless, what's the counter argument to that?
yeah, they would probably say, "Hey, make your case in court. You know, this is a district court judge. You know, you get to appeal it." And of course, that's what the administration has been doing. By the way, the Trump administration has been very disciplined about this so far, and that they're like, "We do not agree with the judiciary on this. They are infringing on the executive branch authority that is the law." And but they have been appealing these up the ladder, and some of them are ending up at the Supreme Court. But it's clear in some of these cases, like the one with Judge Boasberg, with the illegal aliens that are, violent gang members from Venezuela, that the court was overstepping its authority. So they would just say, appeal it all the way up, use the process.
Speaking of courts and judges, since you were on
Oh
last,
yeah.
obviously we had the election here in Wisconsin. First of all, I want to ask you on that note about like Act 10, if that gets reversed, what impacts it's going to have, and something that's right along you're on the fact that you're a seventh congressional district representative. There's been talk about possibly re re what redistricting? No, redoing the
Yeah.
maps for the congressional districts.
Yeah.
But first, what is your takeaways from that? The election regarding voter ID passed by a lot, and then of course Brad Schimmel lost by way more than I thought he was going to lose, and then the DPI race. What is your overall takeaways from all that?
Yeah, it was a real thumping that we took last Tuesday as conservatives, and no other way to put it. But what was um, like for some of my colleagues who are that I've talked to this week, they've said to me, "How do you get a conservative defeated by that much, yet the voters say to the constitutional
I
amendment,
know
we want photo ID."
it
And
doesn't
so,
make
think
sense.
about it. Brad Schimmel's opponent has argued against, I mean, she's very publicly argued against photo ID, saying that it's in effect a poll tax. And so I would say to you, I think it's evident that a lot of voters didn't realize that Susan Crawford had taken that position publicly a decade ago. And, you know, but, the voters spoke. They spoke
Yeah,
in regards to the constitutional amendment, and they spoke in regards to the justice.
yeah, yeah. Now that is now we have that court liberal now and stays that way, and it looks like it's going to be that way. What for at least 2 more years? Because I think the next two Supreme Court races are conservatives that are going to be up, so it's going to stay that way. I think for probably about 3 years at least before there's an opportunity for conservatives to kind of get that majority back. Act 10 has been discussed about that possibly being reversed. Let's start there. Do you think that will happen? And if so, what would the impacts be if it did?
Yeah, so Act 10 had been litigated a decade ago after it was put into law, and most people viewed it as settled law. But there's a lawsuit that was filed in the last year or two in circuit court in Wisconsin, and now is percolating its way up through the ranks. And a lot of people expect it to end up at the Supreme Court, and they are anticipating that this court will probably overturn Act 10. It's going to be really interesting to see if they actually do that, because it was done legally, it was done according to the law. The legislative branch did it appropriately. The governor signed it into law. It will be really interesting on what basis the court would overturn Act 10
Hmm.
if they choose to do it. But all I got to say is, if they simply overturn it, hang on to your property
Buckle
tax
up.
or hang on to your wallet because your property taxes are going to go up, and they're going to go up a bunch.
What impact, like more of a maybe more locally, like a lot of schools went to referendums. What impact is that going to have on schools that are already struggling with budgets, or counties with their? I mean, a lot of our counties in the seventh congressional district, these are a lot of small counties, 15,000 people in an entire county type of thing. Uh, how much impact is it going to have on the counties?
Yeah. Well, remember, one of the big things is whereas health insurance, for example, teachers and other public employees, they oftentimes didn't have to pay anything prior to Act 10 for their health insurance. This just said you got to pay a minimum of 12%. So that goes away if Act 10 goes away. That would be one example. I was talking to Senator Quinn this week, and he commented that like Barron County, they're really concerned that this could lead to a budget deficit, and they're going to have to reduce the services that they can provide at the county
That's right.
level. And so there's a variety of impacts that will happen as a result of it. I mean, the big number is it's over like 10, $20 billion that have been saved over the last decade by taxpayers. And does that go away? People are going to see their property taxes go up significantly.
The was MacGyver Institute a few weeks ago had a story, and they had all their data and their formulas, and they estimated $35 billion. That was their estimate. $35 billion was saved in Wisconsin, but they have a different formula how they use it. But regardless, a lot of money. Also, is the potential for the congressional district maps being realigned. Do you think that is likely, and are you concerned about that?
Um, so the new Justice, Susan Crawford, told funders at a fundraiser, she said, this is something we may take up. So I take her at her word that they may take it up. I mean, there's a really good analysis that was done by the Wisconsin Institute of Law for Law and Liberty, Lucas Weber, one of the attorneys down there, about why they should not take it up. And in fact, it would be in violation of the law for them to do that. Now, does that stop the court from doing it? Those four justices are going to make that decision, but it's possible that they could take it up. I think there would also be some real concerns. The federal courts watch this closely because remember, we're not talking about redistricting for
Right,
the legislature.
right.
We're talking about federal redistricting for the congressional maps. And so the federal courts watch that closely also. And if they get the wrong way on the Voting Rights Act or anything like that, the federal courts will step in. It'll be interesting to see if they choose to step into it because there are many liberal activists that believe that there should be two seats that should flip from Republican to Democrat here in Wisconsin by doing a redistricting.
Obviously, the biggest top story that most people have been hearing about and following, and if you just go to like CBS News and pick the top 10 or top 15 most read news outlets in the country, every story for the last 2 weeks, and probably rightfully so, that's fine, is about tariffs. It seems like it changes every day. What's the latest update on tariffs? And are you still in support of what President Trump is doing?
Short answer, yes, I am in support. So yesterday he announced a pause on tariffs
No?
for 90 days. They go back to 10% for virtually all countries except China. There may be an exception for Canada also. I'm not sure of that one, but I know there is an exception for China, and I think they're at 125% at this point. But I think part of the reason for the pause is they've got over 60 countries that have come to our trade representatives and said, "Hey, we want to renegotiate tariffs." So I think this is the 90-day pause is to allow these countries to be able to get with our trade representatives and negotiate new tariffs. And I actually believe at the end of 90 days, you're going to see lower tariffs, especially by other countries on United States goods. I think you're going to see lower tariffs than when this all started, back at the start
Mm.
of the Trump presidency on January 20th. So I think we're headed in the right direction at this point. And I would just point out to people that remember, Canada has over 200% tariffs on dairy products. We're the dairy state here in Wisconsin, and our farmers have to pay over, and food processors have to pay over 200% tariffs to get their dairy products into Canada. We don't have that coming back the other way
Hmm.
to that extent. We may have some tariffs, but certainly not to that extent. So that's hurting our farmers. You look at ginseng, which is primarily grown in Marathon County here in the 7th Congressional District. The Chinese have used that as a pawn for years. It is time, and I'm reaching out to Peter Navarro and the trade representative and saying, you got to put ginseng on the list with China, that they got to handle this differently, because they've been using ginseng as a pawn
Hmm.
to stop our ginseng from going into China, and it's really hurt our ginseng growers. So there's a variety of things like that that are going on, and I believe at the end of the day, America is going to be in a much better place.
I was talking to, so I'm not educated on this at all. So I rely on smart people. And I talked to a person, an insider about this. It was this person's from Madison, and kind of has a bigger picture view of how all this stuff works. And I had asked him the tariffs, like, is everything that I'm seeing, everything I'm reading, tell me what's really going on. He said, it was his view that what you see now isn't what it's going to be. Just be patient. This is bargaining and negotiating. That's what this is. Do you agree with that? For
Yes,
President Trump to use this as a bargaining and negotiating thing where it's going to be fine, it's what you see now isn't what it's going to be. It sounds like that's what you're saying. But do you think that is a bargaining chip that he's using to get people to the table so we can get better deals?
Yes, I believe that's the case. And I think when you look at the actions of yesterday, where he reduced tariffs
Yeah.
down to 10% and paused the tariff regime for 90 days, except for China, he has now taken and separated China from all these other countries. And let's strike good bilateral trade agreements with these countries, because we should trade with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. But you got to protect American interests also, because we have exported so much of our industry. I mean, look at Main Streets where we live, Ben, in northern Wisconsin. I can go to one after another. In the last 30 years, so many of them have been hollowed out, oftentimes because they lost a key industry, a mill, a plant, or something like that. And that's what eats up your prosperity of your local community, and has hollowed out our main streets. And that's ultimately what this is about. President Trump is looking out for Main Street, not Wall Street. I hope Wall Street does well, but they've done really well the last 30 years with this whole global trade regime. It is time to look out for America. President Trump made it very clear that's what he was doing. The people voted for him on November 5th, knowing that, and he is now going to deliver for the American people. There's two things that I would say in regards to this, though. What I'm urging the administration to do, besides this whole renegotiation in regards to tariffs, to be most effective in bringing some of these industries back, building new mills and plants and stuff like that, we got to deal with the regulatory burdens, especially the permitting processes. Because when it takes 5 to 10 years to get the permits, people are not going to invest the money. And the Trump administration is acting on that. They're doing a good job. The second thing, and they've not acted on this yet, but they need to, in my opinion, they've got to institute work requirements. We've got 5 to 10 million able-bodied Americans that are sitting on the sidelines who could be working. We need to get them back in the game. We do those two things in conjunction with the renegotiation of tariffs, and we are going to see renewed manufacturing here in America, and I hope in Wisconsin.
Speaking of manufacturing, I'll get to this in a second, but Nathaniel Melton says, plus China is stealing so much intellectual property and reselling it super cheap, hurting American business. Excuse me, hurting American businesses and creativity. Do you agree with that?
Yes, they have a long history here of intellectual property theft. I mean, it's actually kind of cultural as a result of having a communist country. It all belongs to the state, right? They don't look in terms of private property rights. So they see no problem with stealing intellectual property, and they do that. And the other thing is they use slave labor. And Is that what you want? I mean, do you want to wear Nikes that sometimes are made with the benefit of slave labor? I think most Americans would say, no, I don't want something like that. So this whole regime of let's just get it cheap, um, sometimes it is been at the cost of human rights and the protection of intellectual
Mm.
property, including the stuff that Americans have created.
Was a few weeks ago, but since you were on our show last, we had a story up, and I think you even had a statement about it. But Henry Repeating Arms was shifting remaining operations to Wisconsin. I think they were in New Jersey, I believe. Obviously, that's right here in your 7th congressional district. Um, how much impact is it going to have? Is it, hey, that's pretty nice, that's pretty cool, but not that big a deal, or is it a big deal?
It's a big deal. It's a company that's. This is what happens when you say to a company, "We don't want you anymore." And while New Jersey didn't say that overtly, they certainly sent that message with all the gun control stuff that the politicians are doing in New Jersey and just saying, we don't like guns, guns are dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, a company goes, can we stay here any longer? And Henry decided we're better off having all of our operations in Wisconsin. And I'm sure there's some things like being able to have the plants close together rather than having to move stuff New Jersey to Wisconsin, Wisconsin to New Jersey, consolidating it in one region like they're doing now. I'm sure there's real economic benefits, but it's also about a state like New Jersey saying, we don't care much for firearms manufacturers. Well, you know what? Henry Firearms, welcome. Welcome to bring your entire operation here to Wisconsin, including northern Wisconsin. Ladysmith and Rice Lake and the surrounding communities are going to benefit from that. They have a long, proud history of making some of the best firearms in the world, and we're so happy to have them consolidating it all here in northern Wisconsin.
We have a few minutes left, so before I ask you what's on your agenda today and coming up this weekend, it sounds like, well, we already kind of talked about it a little bit where you're going to be going, but is there anything else you want to make sure we talked about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Whew. I mean, it's just a busy time here.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break for 2 weeks here over Easter after we vote today, and we'll be busy doing stuff. All the members will be doing stuff in their districts and stuff like that, but also enjoying Easter. By the way, happy Easter, everyone! And by the way, remember the reason for the season. But it will be fun to go out and find those Easter eggs, right? And
Two things can be true at the same time. We celebrate our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and Easter eggs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm going to be having hard-boiled eggs for a week. I know that. So,
do you still color eggs? I just now realized I cannot remember the last time I did that.
yeah, we still color eggs.
Do you really? That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we should do that.
So, but we're going to get ready for the next round of stuff that we need to deal with here. The reconciliation bill is front and center. We're getting to May, where we were hoping to get that reconciliation bill out by the end of May. Don't know if we're going to be able to meet that deadline, but hopefully we can get that done. And we're getting prepared for this next round. Like I mentioned to you, I'm going to be at UW-Madison tomorrow. We're going to have that hearing in regards to NCAA and name, image, likeness. And so there'll be lots of stuff going on. And I'm going to try to catch up with some personal stuff. The honey-do list is getting long, Ben.
That is probably the downside of being in your job. I should ask you, because when we put up the announcement that you were going to be on the show, so we put it up yesterday that you're going to be on today. I looked at just a couple of them, and it was about town halls. And you and I talked about this last month or the last time that you were on. The time before that, I can't remember. There seems to be a lot of Tom doesn't do town halls. Do you want to address that?
I mean, I do town halls. And, I mean, it is.
Well, there you go.
It isn't. I mean, it isn't like I do them every week, but we did 7 town halls at the end of January. We covered the whole district. We were in Rice Lake and Ladysmith, Amory, New Richmond. We were all over. And I do a lot of specific meetings also. For example, I was at the electric cooperative meeting in where was it? It was in Cornell. Yeah, it was in Cornell. I spoke there. I mean, there's a lot of events like that we do that aren't specifically just town halls, but we'll do more town halls as the year goes along, and we're always out there and meeting with people.
Well, this is kind of like a town hall, and people can ask, and I find that funny that, everyone will comment on everything, but then as soon as, like, they won't actually say or ask you questions directly, typically anyway, on a live show, because then you can respond, and they don't want to do that. And also, it's
Yeah.
like, do more town halls. Like, all of a sudden, that means they're going to like you now. See, if you do more town
Well,
halls, all the Democrats are going to love you, apparently.
yeah, for sure. The one thing I'd say is for people that do live locally and they may disagree with me politically and
Right.
whatever, and they want to deliver their message, and they did at the town halls back at the end of January, but they should be aware now. You've got the rent-a-rioters that are out there at this point because they're
Uh,
seeing an opportunity to try to embarrass or shame members of Congress. What's going to happen is members of Congress are going to go just to teletown halls and they're not going
oh,
to do them live. And that's not how it should work. Members, I believe members should go out and do these town halls. But if you're going to have the rent-a-rioters there, as we see them getting imported around the country, you're going to really discourage members from getting out there. And so, um, for
yeah,
those people that genuinely just want to come out and they may disagree and they want to be heard, love to have you. But the rent-a-mob people that show up from the Twin Cities or wherever, they're
I,
just
and
undermining.
by the way, I just found out about that. I did not know that was a thing. I saw it was a story, and then I saw this woman. I think it was on TikTok, and she went through. She explained she got paid like $100 to go to. There was an event last Saturday or something, and I'm assuming it's true. I mean, it was on. I have no idea if it was actually. I'm assuming that it was, but I didn't realize that was a thing. Like they're literally paying people to go there, and then they pay them more if they have a sign, and then they take a survey, and you get paid. It's what? I mean, that's not legit. I mean, if you have a legitimate beef or you want to go right ahead, but that's dumb. Anyway, thank you, Tom, as always. Have a wonderful day, great weekend. Enjoy your couple of weeks off after you get back. Get to that honeydew list, and we'll catch you in a month.
Thanks for the weather forecast because I'm going to be able to get the outside stuff done.
Yeah. Special thank you to Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany for taking time, as he does every month, to come on for a chat. And thank all of you for your comments and your questions. I'll see all of you on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching and have a blessed day.